Are you suffering from pain in your buttock and running down your leg, and you're wondering whether you've got Piriformis Syndrome? If you are, then this video has the answer for you. My name is Harlow and I'm the Over-Fifties Specialist Physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today I'm going to be uncovering the truth about Piriformis Syndrome. Now, before we dive into the video, if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can do that using the buttons below. It really helps me to reach more people who might need help from videos like this. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Piriformis Syndrome. Now, Piriformis Syndrome is something that a lot of information has been posted about online. So if you type in pain in the leg or pain in the buttock, one of the first things that's suggested to you by Google is the fact that you might have Piriformis Syndrome. Now, Piriformis Syndrome is actually quite a mysterious condition, and it's involving a very small muscle in the buttock called the piriformis. And Piriformis Syndrome, when it happens, can cause a pinching on the sciatic nerve, and that can cause nerve pain in the leg, which we call sciatica. So just to show you a bit about the piriformis, this is my model here of the hip. This is the front of the hip here, so you've got the pelvis, and then you've got the femur, which is the main bone in your leg. If we turn it round to the back, this is obviously the back part of the pelvis, and here we have the piriformis. It lives here, it attaches to the sacrum, which is part of your spine, and it runs all the way down here and attaches to the femur. So it's responsible for movements called external rotation, which is turning your thigh outwards, and also abduction, which is taking your leg out to the side. Now, it's a muscle that has a very bad reputation. And its bad reputation comes from the fact that this condition called Piriformis Syndrome exists. And Piriformis Syndrome is basically characterized by the nerve, the sciatic nerve, coming out of the pelvis and running through the piriformis. The piriformis gets tight, it pinches the sciatic nerve, and that can cause pain in the buttock and pain down the leg. Now, the truth about Piriformis Syndrome is that it's very overdiagnosed, okay? Now, Piriformis Syndrome, I've lost count of the number of times people have come in here and they've said, I think I've got Piriformis Syndrome, and it's turned out to be something different. And the reason it's so overdiagnosed, or the reason I know it's overdiagnosed, is the fact that only 10% of the population can actually get Piriformis Syndrome in the first place. And the reason those 10% are different is because the sciatic nerve in those people runs through the piriformis, and in the other 90% of people, it actually runs underneath the piriformis, so it dodges it entirely. So in the 90% of the population, even if they have a tight piriformis, it's not going to pinch the nerve because the nerve is somewhere else entirely. In those 10% of people, if the nerve does run through the muscle, then yeah, if the muscle gets tight, it can pinch the nerve. But this is rarer than you might think. Now, Piriformis Syndrome causes symptoms like buttock pain and pain in the leg, but there are also many other conditions that can cause the same collection of symptoms. Now, in Piriformis Syndrome, people often think they have it because if they press their buttock, it feels tender. If they sit in a funny way, that causes pain down the leg. And if you type those symptoms into Google, the first thing that it will say is Piriformis Syndrome. But there's another condition that can cause pain in your leg from the exact same factors. So sitting for too long, or pressing on your buttock, or slouching in a chair, or walking. A lot of other things can cause sciatica from that, and one in particular is underdiagnosed and is in fact much more common, and that is a disc bulge in the spine. So I'm going to get my spine model to show you what I mean. So in this model, now you can see the whole pelvis. The piriformis would live about here, and it comes over to the hip here, and if you have the sciatic nerve going through it, if it gets tight, it can pinch the nerve. But in everyone's spine, we have discs at the base of the spine, and the discs down here are designed to lubricate the movement of the spine, help with flexibility, and they allow us to bend and twist. Now, if we develop something called a disc bulge, which is where the middle of the disc starts to push towards the back, it can touch the nerve. And this nerve here follows the exact same pattern as where the piriformis is. So it comes through the pelvis and down into the buttock and down the leg as well. So if this nerve is pressed on, it's going to cause pain in the same place. It's going to cause pain in the buttock and it's going to cause pain down the leg. Now, the disc bulges are much more common than tightness in the piriformis, and they can happen to anyone, they can happen to all of us. So most people with them don't even realize they have them because they don't always cause symptoms. But if you have a disc that presses on the nerve, one of the myths is that it always causes back pain, and that's actually not true. Sometimes it can just cause pain in the buttock and pain down the legs, similar to Piriformis syndrome. So how on earth are you supposed to tell the difference between the two? Well, this isn't a gold standard test, but people who have Piriformis syndrome tend to be in less pain than people who have a disc bulge or a disc prolapse, okay? So the classic presentation of Piriformis syndrome would be someone saying, after I've been walking for 10 minutes, I start to get this nagging pain in my bottom, and then the pain starts to spread down the leg. Or after I've been cycling for a while, it starts, or if I've been sitting on a hard chair, then slowly I can feel buttock pain starting and pain in the leg, okay? When it's a disc bulge, it can be, I can hardly stand up because it hurts so much. Or I can hardly turn over in bed because every time I move that leg, I get a lancinating pain right down to my foot. That's more like a disc bulge. And a lot of the people who come in, they can hardly walk and they say, I think I've got Piriformis syndrome. And it's not the first place I look, because usually those people have a disc problem or something else in the spine, which is causing a much more severe pain. Now, some people are at risk of Piriformis syndrome. So obviously you have to be in the 10% who have that anatomical variation. The other people who are at risk of it are actually runners and cyclists and people who do long distance activities. And the reason this can be the case is because if you develop a muscle imbalance around your hips, the piriformis can work much harder than it was designed to, usually because your gluteal muscles are not working as hard as they should. And over time, if you're running or cycling lots of miles each week, that can cause the piriformis to get tighter and tighter and tighter, which is why it's common in runners and it's common in cyclists. Now, it's also common in people who spend a lot of time sitting on quite hard chairs. So if you are a desk-based worker and you sit on quite a firm chair and you're starting to notice pain in your buttock that's coming down the leg, there's a chance you have Piriformis syndrome, okay? So those are the people who are mostly at risk. If you fall into one of those categories, it might be worth getting checked out. There are a number of tests we can do in clinic to help to differentiate between the two. But for the vast majority of people who have sciatica, the problem is a disc bulge. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful. That's all I've got to say about Piriformis syndrome. Don't believe the myths. It's not as common as the internet would have you believe. I've probably only seen it about 4 or 5 times in my 5 years of practicing in this kind of setting. So it is not as common as most people think. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today on Piriformis syndrome. If you want to get more from me, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50, and it will give you loads more strategies, exercises, and tips to keep yourself healthy in your 50s and beyond. And if you want to get in touch with me for an appointment, please use the links below this video to do so. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next one.